Take a human being from 50,000 years ago, no phone, no fan, no ice, no air conditioning, and drop them into today's summer. Would they survive? Would they even last a week? The answer is stranger than you think, so let's actually work through it. Let's set the rules first, because this isn't just who sweats more. We're comparing two versions of the same species. Same lungs, same skin, same brain. The only difference is time, and the environment that time built around them. Ancient humans lived through ice ages, droughts, and blistering heat long before thermometers existed. But here's the twist. The heat they survived and the heat we're facing now are not the same beast. Modern summers are hotter, more humid in ways that matter, and this is the part people forget. They're happening in a world ancient humans would not recognize. No shade from a forest that's been cleared, no river that hasn't been dammed or diverted, no rest, because there's nowhere left that isn't radiating heat back at you. So the real question isn't who's tougher, it's who's better matched to the world they're standing in. Here's something wild. Humans are, pound for pound, one of the best heat-dumping mammals on Earth. We don't have thick fur trapping warmth against our skin. We have somewhere between 2 and 4 million sweat glands, more than almost any other animal alive. When we sweat, that moisture evaporates off bare skin and pulls heat out of the body with it. Scientists believe this is exactly why early humans could hunt in the heat of the day when lions and other predators had to retreat into the shade. We weren't the fastest animal on the savannah. We couldn't outrun much of anything, but we could outlast almost anything because we could keep cooling ourselves while moving, and most other animals simply couldn't. This adaptation is ancient. It didn't happen last century, it happened over hundreds of thousands of years, shaped by life on hot, open landscapes. So biologically, an ancient human dropped into today's heat isn't some fragile caveman who faints in the sun. Their body is, in some real sense, built for exactly this kind of stress. But here's where it gets complicated. Sweating only works if the sweat can actually evaporate, and that depends entirely on humidity. In dry heat, sweat evaporates fast and the cooling effect is strong. But in humid heat, the kind spreading across more of the planet as ocean temperatures rise, the air is already so full of moisture that it can't absorb much more. Your sweat just sits there. You keep producing it, you keep losing fluids and salt, but you're not actually cooling down. This is measured using something called wet bulb temperature. Past a certain wet bulb threshold, the human body physically cannot cool itself anymore, not because of weakness, not because of poor conditioning, but because of basic physics. Sweat stops working as a cooling system entirely, no matter how tough the person standing in it is. Ancient humans never really faced this. Even the hottest regions they lived in rarely combined extreme heat with extreme humidity for sustained periods. This exact combination, the kind now showing up in parts of South Asia, the Persian Gulf and elsewhere, is a relatively new problem. Some researchers argue it's essentially unprecedented in human history, so the sweat system that made ancient humans heat champions on the open savanna. In a modern, humid heatwave, that same system can quietly become a trap. Here's the next problem. Sweating that much costs you resources, water, salt, electrolytes. Ancient humans were nomadic. They knew their landscape intimately, where the water sources were, which plants held moisture, how to read the land for shade and shelter. Survival wasn't about raw willpower. It was about deep, practical knowledge passed down over generations, tested and refined by trial and error long before anyone wrote anything down. Drop that same ancient human into a modern city during a heatwave, and suddenly all of that knowledge is useless. There's no river to read. There's no waterhole to track. There's concrete, glass, and asphalt. Materials that don't just fail to help, they actively make things worse. This is called the urban heat island effect. Cities can run several degrees hotter than the natural landscape around them because concrete and asphalt absorb heat all day and radiate it back out, including at night when the body is supposed to get a break and actually recover. Ironically, the ancient human survival skills, reading terrain, finding water, seeking natural shade, would be almost worthless in a city. Meanwhile, the modern human's skills, knowing to check a weather app, knowing where the nearest air-conditioned building is, would be the real survival tools in that environment. Let's flip the question. What does a modern human have that would make survival easier? Obvious one first, air conditioning. It sounds almost too simple, but climate control might be the single biggest reason modern heatwaves aren't killing far more people than they already do. Being able to step out of extreme heat for even a few hours can be the difference between recovery and collapse. Second, information. Modern humans get heat warnings before the heat even arrives. We know to hydrate before we're thirsty, stay indoors during peak hours, and check on vulnerable people around us. Ancient humans had none of that early warning. They simply lived the heat as it came, with no forecast at all guiding their next move. Third, medicine. Heat exhaustion and heat stroke are medical emergencies. Rehydration therapy, cooling treatments, IV fluids, none of that existed for early humans. If heat sickness set in seriously, that was often the end of the story. So in a strange way, the modern human's biggest survival advantage isn't a stronger body. It's better information and better infrastructure, things that raw physical toughness simply can't substitute for. So could an ancient human survive a modern summer? In the right setting, arguably better than most of us. Drop them into open, dry terrain with access to natural water and shade, and their bodies, evolved sweat systems, lean builds, heat-tolerant physiology might genuinely outperform a modern human who's spent their life in climate-controlled comfort and lost some of that natural heat tolerance along the way. But drop them into a modern city during a humid heatwave with no forecast, no infrastructure, and no cultural knowledge of the terrain, and their advantage disappears fast. The very things that made them formidable in their world become almost irrelevant in ours. And that's really the twist of this whole story. Survival was never just about the strength of the body. It's about how well the body matches the world around it. Ancient humans were perfectly adapted to their world. We're adapted, imperfectly, and increasingly under pressure, to ours. Here's the part that should actually make you pause. The kind of extreme, humid heat we've been talking about, the kind that pushes the human body past its cooling limits, used to be rare. Now, it's becoming more frequent in more places for longer stretches of the year. In other words, we're not just asking whether an ancient human could survive a modern summer. We're quietly asking whether modern humans, with all our technology, can keep surviving summers that keep getting more extreme. The ancient human had thousands of years to adapt to their environment, generation after generation, slowly shaping bodies and behaviours around the same climate. We're facing a changing one in the span of a single lifetime, sometimes even a single decade. There's another layer to this that most people never think about: age and body composition. Ancient hunter-gatherer populations were generally lean, muscular, and physically active every single day of their lives. That combination matters more than people realize, because excess body fat acts as insulation, trapping heat rather than releasing it. A modern human living a sedentary lifestyle, carrying more body fat and less daily physical conditioning, starts the fight against heat already at a disadvantage before the sun even comes up. Then there's the question of acclimatization. The human body can actually adapt to heat over a period of 1 to 2 weeks through a process where sweat becomes more diluted, blood plasma volume increases, and the heart becomes more efficient at pumping blood to the skin to release heat. Ancient humans living outdoors permanently were essentially always acclimatized. Modern humans moving constantly between air-conditioned homes, air-conditioned cars, and air-conditioned offices often lose this natural adaptation entirely. In a strange twist, comfort itself can make a modern body less prepared for heat, not more. This is actually one of the more dangerous ironies of modern life. The very technology that protects us from heat also quietly erodes our biological ability to handle it when that protection fails, during a power outage, a heat wave that overwhelms the grid, or simply stepping outside for too long without preparation. Sleep is another factor ancient humans had that we've largely lost. Nighttime cooling used to be a guaranteed reset button. Temperatures would drop once the sun went down, giving the body a chance to recover from a day of heat stress. But in modern cities, the urban heat island effect keeps nighttime temperatures elevated too, sometimes barely dropping at all. That means less recovery, more accumulated heat stress night after night, and a body that never fully resets before the next day's heat begins again. Children and older adults complicate this picture even further. In ancient communities, the very old and very young were often the most protected members of the group, kept in shade, given priority access to water, and cared for communally during extreme conditions. In modern heatwaves, it's frequently the elderly and isolated who are most at risk, sometimes without anyone nearby to notice the warning signs in time. The biology of vulnerability hasn't changed much across 50,000 years. What's changed is the social structure that used to catch people before they fell through the cracks. So when you zoom out, this whole question stops being a simple contest of toughness and starts looking like a much deeper story about mismatch. Ancient humans carried a body finely tuned by evolution for their specific world. We've inherited that same body, virtually unchanged, and dropped it into a world reshaped by concrete engines and a warming atmosphere. The body hasn't caught up. It can't catch up that fast. Evolution simply doesn't move on the timescale of a single century, let alone a single decade. It's worth pausing on just how fast this shift has actually happened. For the vast majority of human history, heat was a local problem. A community dealt with the climate of the specific valley, coastline, or grassland it called home, and over enough generations, small physical and cultural adjustments accumulated to fit that one environment. What we're facing now is not local. It's global, it's accelerating, and it's outpacing the slow, patient process that shaped the human body in the first place. Cities built for a climate that existed decades ago are now regularly experiencing conditions their infrastructure was never designed to handle, from power grids buckling under air conditioning demand to transit systems shutting down when rails expand in extreme heat. There's also a psychological piece to this that's easy to overlook. Ancient humans grew up expecting heat, planning around it, and reading it as a normal part of daily life to be respected rather than feared. Many people today have spent their entire lives shielded from serious heat exposure, which means the instincts for recognizing early warning signs, the dizziness, the stopped sweating, the confusion, are often duller than they should be. Knowledge that used to be common survival sense has become, for a lot of people, something closer to trivia. None of this means modern humans are somehow weaker as a species. It means the environment shifted underneath us, faster than our biology or our instincts could reasonably keep pace with. An ancient human wouldn't have needed a weather app to know a heat wave was dangerous. They would have felt it in the air, read it in the behavior of animals around them, and adjusted instinctively. We've traded that instinctive fluency for convenience, and convenience is a wonderful thing right up until the exact moment it fails. So next time you're complaining about the heat with the AC running behind you, remember, your ancient ancestors probably could have out-toughed you on an open plain, sweating their way through midday heat that would have sent most modern humans running for shade. But out here, in this world, you're the one built to survive it. Just don't take that advantage for granted, because the margin between comfort and danger is a lot thinner than it looks from behind a fan, and it's getting thinner every year the planet keeps warming. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment your thought and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.